Welcome back to Kings of Columbus. I'm Bill Landis. That's Doug Lesmerises, still in his Nashville hotel room. No guitar for this episode, Doug. For the people who did not watch the most recent Kings of the North, Doug played the guitar on that episode. I don't know if he was planning on gracing us with his musical talents on this episode of Kings of Columbus or not. What do you think?
No, I
Okay.
felt like when I listened to it, the guitar didn't come through as much as I wanted it to. But I'm also now realizing, because I'm in Nashville and there's a guitar on the wall, like a real guitar just on the wall that you can take off. I'm realizing I had a dream last night that I had 3 guitars in my room because I was just looking around thinking to myself, where's the second and third guitar? And I was like, oh, wait, you dreamt that, which means I need to leave here.
Yeah, you need to get out of Nashville and get back to Columbus, where Ohio State is in the middle of camp. And we wanted to take some time here on this episode of Kings of Columbus to answer some of our texter questions, our subtext subscribers. We haven't done one of these in a while, Doug. I don't think. So we have a mix here. We have a lot of Michigan questions. I did not grab every single Michigan question. I thought I grabbed a representative sample of a few Michigan questions. We'll touch on a few topics there. Have some questions about more of the team, like kind of stuff that's going on in camp. Ohio State will have its 6th practice on Wednesday. Thursday will be the Big Ten Network Day at Ohio State camp, so that'll be a fully open practice. Not quite sure what to expect there. In the past, that's been a little bit of a later practice, but we'll see. They're ramping up to go have a scrimmage on Saturday, so we'll see what Thursday's like. Either way, we'll have our team there, and we'll have observations, and we'll have snap judgments, and we'll have texts from what we see. But we have questions from you guys right now regarding camp, and then we have some coaching questions that I thought were interesting, like some coaching future questions about Ryan Day, Brian Hartline, and then a couple of the sillier ones because we like to do that here on Kings of Columbus. But I think we should start with the Michigan stuff, Doug, because the folks were fired up as the news broke earlier in this week about a draft, I guess, of the notice of allegations, or a draft, maybe not the final draft of a notice of allegations regarding the Connor Stallions investigation from the NCAA. And people are fired up. They want to know what's going on. So, like I said, I tried to get a few questions that I thought kind of represented all the general thoughts that I saw coming in. And I'm going to, every question was sort of like layer 2 with a bunch of different stuff. So I'm going to like pick and choose some things out of specific questions that I think will get us talking about a few different points relative to Michigan. The first one is from Jason, who asked kind of simply, like, how do you think Ohio State fans should react to / feel about the leak of the NCAA's notice of allegations to Michigan? And he asked some stuff about what we think specifically some penalties might be, and we'll get to that in a second. But just like feelings wise, Doug, do you have like your finger on the pulse, I guess, of how you think Ohio State fans should be kind of digesting this information?
So just so people know, we talked about this for about 25 minutes on the Tuesday. Actually, we put it up Monday afternoon, Kings of the North. Like we kind of got to it as fresh as we could. And we don't change our mind about what we think based on who the audience is. But I think you talk to the audience about what matters most to the audience. So you and I disagree on some of this, I think, a little bit. I actually would be curious to have you answer this question first, and then I will build off that. So the question is like, just basically, what should Ohio State fans be thinking about the whole Connor Stallions thing based on the latest information piled on top of the previous information? Correct? That's what we're doing?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess I would say, like, I would say Ohio State fans should be probably a little cautious in their expectations of where this is ultimately going to go. Angry about the information, angry about what happened. I think I can't imagine there's an Ohio State fan who didn't think this was a big deal. So I thought that there was enough in some of the stuff that was released earlier this week to kind of stoke those flames a little more, right? To make you even angry about what happened, to question the legitimacy of Michigan's last 3 seasons, like all that stuff. I actually think is valid. I just don't know that it was like a smoking gun in the sense that, okay, here comes the hammer from the NCAA kind of thing. So I guess Ohio State fans should feel, I don't know, as angry about it as they want to feel, as cheated by it, I guess, as they want to feel. But I would say don't take that information as like, okay, here we go, Michigan's about to get destroyed by all this, because I just don't know that that's where we're headed.
I think that's right? It feels like even after the fact that if you're, I think maybe even since we recorded Monday, just more information or more opinions about if you're waiting for Michigan to have its national title vacated, or if you're waiting for severe future postseason bans or that kind of thing. I don't know that that's, again, you shouldn't get your hopes up about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, though, Ohio State fans actually might be in the strongest position about this, or in a stronger position relative to anybody who's just thinking about Michigan like as a national champion. And so my advice for Ohio State fans is don't get too caught up in punishment, because if you think of it, all right, Ohio State has a bank, and you believe the bank got robbed. And for a while you're like, well, money's missing. I'm pretty sure we got robbed. Didn't we get robbed? And it's like, no, I think maybe you just lost the money. I just don't know if Ryan Day, when it gets to the last Saturday in November, I don't know if he knows how to guard money. I think you just lost it. It's like, I think someone took it. It's like, I think everybody agrees that the bank was robbed, right? We talk like, so from the point of like where Ohio State's fans were like, maybe we lost the money or maybe it was stolen. I don't know. It was stolen. I think everybody acknowledges that now. So hold on to that as an Ohio State fan. And now if we're at the punishment phase, I just wouldn't get caught up in the punishment phase, because was it a lone wolf? Was it a conspiracy? Was there a mastermind? How long did they think about robbing the bank? How detailed were the plans? Did a guy just walk in off the street one day and be like, I'm going to rob the bank? The bank got robbed. Everybody knows the bank got robbed. And that to me is kind of the point. So you don't have to follow the ins and outs of the trial and try to figure out, is one guy going to get a year in jail or are 6 guys going to get 20 years in jail? Because that's not really as much your business. What you really care about, because like, do you care about Michigan as much? You care about Ohio State, and you care about Michigan as it relates to Ohio State. So the broader question, and I actually think, we have a guy, John, who's a Michigan fan who follows KOTN, and I care about what he thinks. He thought maybe we didn't emphasize enough, like on that show, that like they weren't sign stealing late in the year last year because they got caught, right? So the effect of that on a national title, the last half of the national title season, they weren't doing the thing that maybe they were doing before. That is a point worth making. But for Ohio State fans, I think the point is this. There's and you're smirking, but for real, but for Ohio State fans, I think it is much less about Michigan winning the national title and much more about Michigan turning the tide in the rivalry. So, were signs stolen? Yes. Did that violate NCAA rules? I think some people think that, it was kind of a loophole, or it wasn't really. Other people weren't doing this. So yes, they were stolen and it did violate rules. And did that give Michigan an edge against Ohio State? Well, when it started, Michigan started winning. So there's a lot of circumstantial evidence there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I think Ohio State fans can hold on to. Everybody else who maybe more specifically is arguing, did Michigan win the national title fairly? Should that championship be taken away? What should the punishment be? I just don't think that's where Ohio State fans have to be. Did Connor Stalions, regardless of who else knew or didn't know, did his actions violate rules and help flip the rivalry? Yes. And very strongly, probably yes. So that's where I think Ohio State fans should be. And then you can go up to your friends who are Michigan fans and be like, yeah, you guys won the last 3, but you did cheat to do it. Like, I think that's that's the strongest case, I think, in this whole thing. And who cares about the national title? Because like, that's not why Ohio State fans are the maddest. They're mad because Michigan beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. So, and even if the third game, Stalions was gone, Michigan didn't have Harbaugh, they were penalized, it kind of threw the poison tree. What flipped it and got Michigan rolling, that was helped by a nefarious act. So
yeah.
And I think that should be, that's a heck of a thing to tell your Michigan friend at the barbecue from now until the end of time, right? Isn't that a good thing? I mean, like, that's good ammo for Ohio State fans. So seize that, hold on to that. That's my overall advice.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it actually, it sort of gets to another question we had from Jamie, who said a lot of the normal like college football pundits have said they expect little to no punishment for Michigan for the sign stealing scandal, or at least like nothing to the maximum extent. If that's the case, then why outline numerous level 1 and level 2 infractions in a notice of allegations? Wouldn't the NCAA simply reinforce their image of a paper tiger by doing so? And I think the answer to that is like, yes, but maybe there's some self-awareness there by the NCAA, like understanding the limits of their powers. And if they're not going to be able to drop the hammer on Michigan for whatever reason that might be, at least like they got the information out there, right? So that people can do what you just talked about, so that like the court of public opinion sort of has the information that it needs. Is the NCAA actually motivated by that? I'm not entirely sure, but I do think some fairly significant damage, kind of reputationally, has already been done by the information that has been put out there by whoever decided to put it out there. So that even if it doesn't lead to the harshest punishments possible, or what might amount to merely like a slap on the wrist or something like that, there is still an impact felt by Michigan, I think, and also a reason for, or something for, Ohio State fans to hold on to, even if you're not getting 100% of what you hoped for when this news first broke.
The reputational impact, I think, is real, and I'm sure there were Michigan fans who said to their Ohio State friends in the previous 2 decades, while Ohio State was dominating the rivalry, yeah, but you guys are a bunch of cheaters. Like I would imagine that's where Michigan people went. And when you stacked up what happened with Maurice Claret and what happened with Terrell Pryor and that situation, and then you stack up what happened with Zach Smith, like the punishment, obviously Jim Tressel lost his job and that was a huge thing. But actually then like Ohio State got another great coach who like basically elevated the program. So it didn't like the punishments, and it's not like they took away the 2002 national title or anything. Like the harm is in the rivalry. The harm of all that was just reputational, was just what the view that somebody could feel superior and would have some things to point to. And Ohio State fans could argue back against it, but Michigan had some stuff on their side to argue for that idea. So that's where this is now, I think. Because here's the thing. If you said, okay, say Harbaugh hadn't left and the punishments came out, and the punishments for Michigan were Jim Harbaugh is fired, the strength coach is fired, the defensive coordinator is fired, a couple other assistants are fired, and 15 of the 25 best players from last year can't ever play college football again. That already happened. It's not punishment, right, but it already happened. So Harbaugh's gone. So like, I don't, and whether, I mean, Ohio State fans are going to hate Harbaugh from now to forever. Michigan fans are going to love Harbaugh from now to forever. It's rivalry stuff, right? So I don't think Ohio State fans should lose a lot of sleep over what Jim Harbaugh's NCAA punishment is, and whether Michigan loses some scholarships or whatever. The only thing that I think would really matter was if they got their last year's title vacated, which probably doesn't feel like that's on the table. So then it's just barbecue talk, man.
We did have a question from Scott, who did ask sort of like what we think might happen. He also added on, like, if the NCAA wasn't doing anything, then they're a joke. Like that sentiment was a prevailing one, I think, in a lot of the texts that we got. It's like, how could the NCAA have all this information and not drop the hammer on Michigan? I don't know. I just think it kind of speaks to the nature of like what the NCAA is and has become, and I don't know. It doesn't have the power it used to have, I guess. And like the playoff and the NCAA are like separate entities when you want to talk about like vacating championships and stuff like that. It's just kind of a convoluted mess. So I don't know. I don't really have a firm grasp on what I think is going to happen to Michigan, other than like probably some suspensions. Probably like I think like Sharon Moore will probably get suspended for a little bit. But like short of that, like I don't know that I'm expecting scholarship reductions. One, because like what that means even is different than what it meant even 5 years ago. With like the NIL stuff, like you can reduce scholarships, but can I still pay this kid $25,000 to come here, kind of thing? I don't know if a postseason ban is going to happen, and I'm kind of with you. Like I just don't think they're going to take the national championship away. But do you have any kind of concrete thoughts on what you think might happen with Michigan?
I'm certainly not an expert on this. Most of my thoughts are based on other people's reporting and what I've listened to other people say. So, the NCAA is a joke. It's all, and it's one of the things where everybody, I think is it the one unifier in college football right now, even between North and South? The NCAA is a joke. Everybody agrees on that. But then when they're investigating you want them to be a joke in an ineffective way. And then when they're investigating somebody else, you want them to be a joke, at least in an effective way, and hammer somebody. So it's just shifting perspectives. I think they want to get it right. They don't really want to punish forward anymore. I don't think they want to future ban players from a postseason because of what happened in the past, especially when no players were involved. So I don't think that's going to happen. As you said, they're going to be at 105 scholarship possibility that nobody wants to be at anyway. I don't think a lot of teams are going to get to 105. So that kind of thing, it doesn't matter anymore. People have talked about fines for the university, but universities have lots of money. But I think that would be something that the main thing would be, could it do something not to derail Sharon Moore's career, but inhibit it in some way, especially as he just gets going as a head coach? And the one thing would be, I do think it could affect Michigan on the field this year, just as it percolates, just as there's stuff hanging around. If I thought Michigan still had a chance to be a 9-3 playoff team and be a good football team, I think this might affect this season enough for them that when we get down to it on KOTN before the season to make our playoff picks, maybe I'm not going to have Michigan in the playoff just because it's another thing for them to be thinking about. But clearly, again, listening to the Michigan guys, the Michigan folks, they're the level 1 violation for the program is the thing. And so whether that means you get put on probation, whether that means there are some institutional things that happen, it's also it's a black mark, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
At the barbecue, Labor Day barbecue. Oh man, level 1 violation for the program. Yeah, I got cheese on the burger. Level 1 violation for the program, man. I don't know, but I know they didn't say lack of institutional control. Yeah, diet, please. Can I have diet? But I'll tell you what, level 1 violation for the program. That's serious stuff, right?
Yeah. I like.
We would like to be invited to your barbecue, and we could have this conversation on a Monday. On a Monday, and then we'll watch Boston College, Florida State that night. But we'll come off the first weekend of games, talk a little bit. Hey, Michigan, Fresno State, how'd they look? Hey, Ohio State look in the opener. And we'll talk level 1 violations.
You just have to prepare yourself if you're the one hosting the barbecue that Doug eats plain burgers. Doesn't he? He doesn't get anything on them.
I went to Shake Shack. Went to Shake Shack last night. 2 well done burger patties. They had a button for well done. Burn them. Just a little bit of onion. If I'm not talking to people, I'll get onion on it. And I was done talking to people. If I had gotten it for lunch and I was going to go talk to people for another 5 hours, no onion. I try to be self-aware.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
No cheese. No cheese.
No cheese.
No tomato. No mustard. No mayo. Ketchup. Yes, on ketchup. I'm good on ketchup, but
simple.
What do you get on your burger?
I load it up. Yeah, I load it up. I like if I can get ketchup, mayo, and mustard on it, I'll put all 3 on there. I gotta have pickle on there. I can do without lettuce and tomato, but I'll welcome it. I don't like raw onion on my burger. I think it's too overpowering.
Oh yeah, I like a spicy onion. So you can have it. You can set out a fixins bar at your Labor Day barbecue, and you can call it the level 1 violations fixins bar. It's like, where can I get some tomato on this? Check out the level 1. See, it's just, and that should be enough. Do not put your happiness in the hands of the NCAA's ability to punish wrongdoing. That is no way to live.
We have one more question, and it's a quintessential Big Ten question from a different Scott. Since the Big Ten is the conference of libraries, is the best punishment for Michigan to make them wear a scarlet letter for the next decade, or maybe just a scarlet asterisk? This could be the biggest impact on their legacy.
Not joking. That's a great idea. People are talking about advertising patches on jerseys. if Michigan just had to wear a scarlet C for 2 seasons, every player, every coach, very prominent on the front of their jersey or their pullover or whatever, a scarlet C for Connor and for cheating.
It's for cheaters.
And then every time, like, you'd be back in the history book, it's like, oh, what happened in Michigan's 2025 season? To be like, what's that C? That's the kind of thing that matters, right? Judges do that, right? There, you always hear about a case, not always. Every now and then you'll hear about a case where the judge sentences somebody to stand on a street corner and hold up a sign that says, I embezzled $500,000 from my company. And they don't go to jail, but everybody driving by is like, that person is a dirty embezzler. It's like, reputation matters, man.
Yeah.
So, Conference of Libraries, I'm glad that's catching on.
I did not think of this when I initially got the question in from Scott, but I also like the fact that the scarlet letter is also the color of your rival.
That would be.
Right. Yeah.
That is really good. Yeah. So now I'm sure we're going to have Ohio State fans with graphic abilities just superimposing a
big old
C.
scarlet C. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the Michigan, cover up the Jumpman logo with a scarlet C.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things, like Michigan fans are going to have the national championship fixins bar, and Ohio State fans can have the level 1 violations fixins bar. But there's a conversation. It's not clean, right? That's part of this. It's not a clean and easy, straight tip of the cap. You beat us on the field 3 straight times and went 15-0 and won the national championship at the end. It could have been that. Right now, actually, like in college football and college sports, unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that's not clean. I just mean easy and clear. The sport, almost by definition, it is muddied and muddled. But when you've lost on the field, this is something for Ohio State fans to hang on to. And to me, it's not a desperate excuse, especially as it relates to 21 and 22. Especially as it relates to the rebuilding of the Michigan program and 40-3 in the last 3 years and 3 straight playoff appearances, all that kind of stuff. And that's not what, like, the average college football fan is not obsessed with Michigan coming into Ohio Stadium and winning in 2022 and beating CJ Stroud, right? That's not what the average fan thinks about. They think about Michigan's national championship.
Right.
But I think, like, that's the best case. That's the strongest case for anybody who thinks Michigan violated rules. And there still will be people who think they didn't. But I think the 2022 Ohio State game is the single strongest case. And so I feel like there's evidence in Ohio State that favor of Ohio State fans in that instance.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. All right, well, we'll put a pin in the Michigan conversation here. I'm sure there will be more that comes out. When it does, we'll talk about it. Hopefully we covered the ground that people were hoping we would with those couple of questions. And thank you to those of you who sent in Michigan questions. We'll take a break on Kings of Columbus. We come back, we'll talk a little more about this current Ohio State team and what's going on in camp. Back here on Kings of Columbus, Bill Landis, Doug Lesmerises answering. We're not asking questions. We're answering your questions about Ohio State football. We ask plenty of questions. This is time for you guys to ask questions. Yeah, so we're going to answer what's on your mind. Let's get into some camp and more team stuff, Doug. Again, Ohio State on Wednesday will have its 6th practice. Thursday is an open practice. First scrimmage on Saturday. Game's getting closer, man. Here is the first question from Anthony. And in the past, this has been like a full show for you, Doug, at Buckeye Talk. I think maybe we did a full show on it last year. We're going to just give it some time here on this texter question show. Anthony asks, who is your driving the bus candidate for this year? The guy that you are kind of hitching your wagon to and thinking he's going to be, I don't know, better than people are expecting, more important than people are expecting, just going to have a really good year. Who is your driving the bus candidate for 2024?
Yeah, and this is hard because, again, like, this started on Buckeye Talk, and it's sort of like, I know Buckeye Talk just did a whole gigantic show on it and got a lot of listener feedback on it, and like, I love that. I love, like, getting who are fans driving the bus for. It still is like, I still don't know what to do with this sometimes. Like, it was when David Letterman went from NBC to CBS, and it's like he took Stupid Pet Tricks because he invented Stupid Pet Tricks, but he had to rename Stupid Pet Tricks in the top 10 lists and everything. Is like, is it the show? Is it the person? I don't know. We also have like a bunch of stuff lined up on Kings of Columbus. So we're doing a segment, but I love it as a show. And I don't know what I'm very conflicted about.
We can think of it. We can come up with a different vehicle if Bus is making it.
Is it our vehicle? Yeah. I mean, maybe let them come up with a different vehicle. Anyway, I'm just
you said it, not me.
Two guys in combo. And can I also preface this by saying that this is what I wanted to try and wanted to do. And I'm not in Columbus. I didn't watch the last 3 practices. I watched the first one, but I went to Penn State's practice. Now I'm in Nashville for a recruiting conference. Now on Thursday, I'm going to miss Ohio State's practice because I'm going to Cincinnati's practice. And I want to do that. But then things like this come up and I'm like, why am I not at Ohio State's practice? What am I doing? This is insane. Why am I not there? But you're my eyes and ears.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of other wonderful, accomplished people who are there at Ohio State practice. So I'm Austin and Berm and everybody else. I'm free to go elsewhere. But I am not as locked in. I am the least locked in that I've ever been by design. But I'll still say Davison Igbinosun and Jordan Hancock as a non-Denzel Burke corner combo. Not because I don't like Denzel Burke. I think Denzel Burke is great, but I feel like everybody thinks he's great. So I've sort of been on the Davison Igbinosun is long and physical and going to pop as an NFL draft prospect this season. But the way you do that is by playing great on the field. And I also think it's possible that Denzel Burke is just going to shut down his side of the field and nobody's going to throw at him. So then where are they going to throw? But I don't know how he's looked the last couple practices. And then the Jordan Hancock conversation that I continue to cite, where he and I talked about Mike Sainer still at Michigan and being sort of the heartbeat of a great defense as a nickel slot guy and covering and being physical and making plays. And I know from your texts that you were sending out from one of the practices that like Jordan Hancock has maybe looked like that a little bit. So I think Ohio State will have the best secondary in the country, but I think that the first 2 names that pop up when you talk about that are Caleb Downs and Denzel Burke, very justifiably. I think it's possible that Jordan Hancock is the best slot guy in the country, which is what I think like the most impactful, the most important for winning, which I think is exactly what Mike Sainer still was last year. And then I think Davison Igbinosun, it just might be with the 25th pick in the 2025 NFL draft, the Buffalo Bills select Davison Igbinosun. It's like, who thought? It's like, yeah, that guy. Yeah. That's what he's all about. And that he'll not only blow up at the combine and et cetera, but like play really good football this year. So it's Hancock and Igbinosun together.
I love it. I definitely considered both of them when like pondering this question. Like Jordan Hancock is like the modern defensive back, right? Corner safety skill, like ties the whole thing together. I'm actually surprised guys like that don't get drafted higher. I'm thinking of guys like Brian Branch is always one that like immediately leaps to mind. And I think he ended up being like a very early 2nd round pick 2 years ago. And I thought like this guy is a stud. He's the best defensive back in the draft. I can't believe he's not going in the top 15. So like Jordan Hancock, I think is a similar kind of player and will impact games, I think, in a similar fashion. And which was like a little bit puzzling to me last week when we talked to Jim Knowles and he said, you know, when we put extra defensive linemen on the field or we go to sub packages, like Jordan Hancock might have to be the guy that comes off the field. I don't want that. I would like Jordan Hancock out there all the time. I think he's an excellent pick. And then I like Davison Igbinosun quite a bit as well. I do think Denzel Burke is great. There are a lot of reasons to like Denzel Burke, not the least of which is how good he is as a corner. Like he is a heart and soul guy for this defense, I think, and a guy that's going to, you know, speak the truth to his teammates, and I think could try to keep them locked in for the entire season. But when it comes like draft time, when you're talking traits, when you're talking production, I won't be surprised at all if Davison Igbinosun is the guy that is viewed a little more favorably, just because he can run and he's really long and he's really physical. Like you're checking a lot of boxes with cornerbacks, or when you're talking about that with a cornerback. So I like both those guys quite a bit. My driving the bus guy, or whatever we're going to call it.
You ever driven a bus? Have you driven a bus you yourself?
Have I driven? No. What's the biggest vehicle I've driven? Probably like an 18 passenger van kind of thing.
Oh
no, like a U-Haul. I drove a U-Haul truck from Cleveland to Columbus when I moved here.
This is good. So just so people know, we squeeze this in real quick. Like Kings of the North is going to a live show 5 days a week, starting on Monday, August 26th, the week before the season starts. And we also just have some other stuff popping, and we want to, at KOTN, we have a great community here with Ohio State fans, but we want to replicate, like, everything we're doing at KOTN is because of the people watching this show and listening to this show. Like, it worked here because this community is so locked in and loyal and dedicated and educated, and we love it. And they've made every single thing that we're doing next possible. But we want to create sort of want to find a place to help create a community on KOTN. And I would like to have like a question of the day that we have people answer. And I think, what is the largest vehicle you have ever driven, is a great question to ask people, and then hear stories. Yeah. Because mine is probably like a minivan. I'm not driving that. I'm not driving anything. But now I want to hear, we have to do a football show. I kind of want to hear your U-Haul story, or I want to hear your 18-passenger van story. Because I don't know. Yeah. I think it's interesting.
It's pretty daunting driving a car that big. Like,
yeah,
I respect my grandfather was he drove a bus forever, and then he drove a 18-wheeler for the post office. And like, he was king of the road, man. I always, in a very weird way, I kind of admired his ability to like drive vehicles that large without ever incurring like something serious on
100%. Because it's not just you. You have a lot of responsibility for other people. And there is like a real skill involved in that. Yeah. And I would run into buildings. So I want to hear your big rig. I want everyone's big rig stories, man.
Plus, if you do that, like, you might get some people who are like in the military who like drove tanks and stuff. Like,
oh my god,
yeah, or like flew with like bomber airplanes or something, because airplanes count. Yeah,
airplanes count for sure. Have you ever driven a tank? Survey question: 98% no, 2% yes. Let's get all of that 2% on the show. Here's my tank driving story. What a skill!
I want to hear from the guy who wasn't in the military but has driven a tank. that guy's got a story.
I had a few too many on a Saturday night, just walking past. The tank is there. What are you going to do? Driving the tank. That's what we'll be doing next year, driving the tank. But I would look, if I'm driving the tank, I would look like Michael Dukakis. I would be sticking my head out of the tank with a little helmet on, and everybody would say, that guy does not belong in a tank. So I need to be careful.
Yeah. I don't want to drive a tank either. That feels like too much responsibility. All right. My guy is a person we talked about quite a bit going into last season. It's Josh Simmons at left tackle.
This feels personal. Okay. Go
ahead. I think I'm checking myself as much as I guess I will end up kind of checking you. He was better last year than I think you and I thought he was going to be, right?
True. Yes.
And you were, I think I was a little more open to the idea of him being kind of serviceable, if not good, in his first season with Ohio State than you were. But I think he ended up being like pretty good, pretty solid. There are a lot of people talking about Josh Simmons as a potential like rising NFL draft candidate. And I'm not trying to make too much of that, but it has made me pay more attention to him and ask more about him. And in the process of doing that, I think myself have come around to the idea of this guy's ceiling is pretty high. And I think it could be about to click for him in a pretty significant way. I was kind of excited by the idea of, man, they're going to get like 3 years of starting left tackle play out of Josh Simmons when he got here last year.
Yeah.
Now I'm not so certain about that. We'll see. I don't know. I don't sit here today and think Josh Simmons is like definitely going to be a first rounder after the 2024 season. Maybe the ceiling's not quite that high, but we wondered last year, I think, when he got here, like, is this guy even like an NFL caliber player? And I think he's answered some of those questions already. But like, when you talk to Ryan Day or Jack Sawyer was like a big one for me when I asked Jack Sawyer about Josh Simmons at Big Ten Media Days, and he said, you know, the guys I played with who moved like him, the list is short, and Paris Johnson is one of them. I was like, well, that's a pretty strong endorsement. And then I've just been watching him in camp, and like he's moving really well. He's winning one-on-ones in pass rush against Jack, against JT. He just kind of looks the part for me, and I do think he is a guy who at the very least I believe will be in like first team all Big Ten conversation this year. which I think would represent a pretty large leap from where he was when he first got here in his second season with Ohio State. So I am very much driving the bus for that guy, and I'm excited to see what he does this year, because I don't know if you looked at Ohio State's offensive line last year. I don't think you could tell yourself that there was a no doubt about it dude up front. And I think they might have one in Josh Simmons this year.
I was just trying to run through in my head who the other really good left tackles in the Big Ten are, and I don't know that there's anybody that right now you would make a stronger case for than Josh Simmons. I'll never back off the process, just the idea of who's your left tackle? It's San Diego State's right tackle from a year ago. That Ohio State can't live in that world. But Josh Simmons deserves a ton of credit for the progress that he's made, for being able to jump into that situation that Ohio State created that situation a year ago by not really having any other options. And he more than survived a year ago. And now talking about traits here, obviously you're right about all of this. And so it has a chance to be an incredible success story. And then when you think about if we would go back in 5 years or something and do the most impactful transfers into Ohio State, sort of in that transfer era, Justin Fields is always going to be super high on that list, right? And what Jonah Jackson did in the year he was here from Rutgers is going to be super high on that list. And now, what Quinshon Judkins might do and what Caleb Downs might do and all. But Josh Simmons, I think, is maybe going to be one of those guys where it's hey, Bill, who's your list of the top 10 transfers? And it's Josh Simmons is third. And it's came in, did the job, saved them at a really valuable position. And then, by the way, handled his business in year one and in year two was really good. What a credit to that dude. And so it's a little bit, again, just if we went back and we've talked about this before, when you talk about the most important guys, maybe in Urban Meyer era, and it's number 3, Thayer Munford. It's Thayer Munford saved their offensive line for multiple years. As a guy that if you didn't have Thayer Munford, what would you have done? That guy just played a ton of games and played at a high level. I think Josh Simmons, and maybe you saw it coming, maybe you had questions about it coming. It wasn't as much of a sure thing as a lot of other guys into Ohio State. And Josh Simmons might wind up being the transfer version of Thayer Munford. And if that happens, there's not many Ohio State guys that have come through here that I have more respect for than Thayer Munford for what he did for this program, both with a ceiling and with consistency over a long period of time. So for me, who had as many questions about that situation as anything I've ever covered at Ohio State, Josh Simmons being the left tackle. If he's a version of Thayer Munford, which isn't a first-round pick, but which is an NFL pick, a guy who plays in the league and who played at a really high level, I can't think of almost higher praise than that. but it's and saving a high-level program that usually has multiple options everywhere. As good as you are, there's usually somebody comparable behind you. If Josh Simmons wasn't here, or if Josh Simmons just got here and was nope, it's not him, I have no idea what they would have done last year or what they would be doing right now. So I'll take the L on this one when it comes to his performance. I won't take an L on Ohio State can't live that way, but huge credit to that dude, because where would they be right now? Where would they be? They be?
I don't know. We have a question about offensive line depth that we'll get to in a little bit, but I don't know what they would have done. I think you're entering the Donovan Jackson move the tackle conversation at that point, which is again not necessarily where you want to be. He did, I think, save them. And it'll be interesting to follow this year exactly how good he becomes, because I think there is a sweet spot where it's man, Josh Simmons is really good, but it's also man, Josh Simmons could be a first rounder if he comes back next year, and that's ideal, I think, if that happens. So we'll see. And Ohio State was able to keep a lot of potentially pretty high draft picks back for this season too. So it's not a foregone conclusion that Josh Simmons will be gone after this year, but I think there's some momentum building for him. And you mentioned other Big Ten tackles. Jack Nelson at Wisconsin's pretty good. Oregon's got 2 good ones, and AJ Cornelius and Josh Connerly. Ariante Ursary at Minnesota is very good. But I don't know that any of those guys are so good that Josh Simmons can't work his way into that conversation. I really think he could get there by some point in the season.
Why did I even try to get in to a naming Big Ten tackles contest with you. I was like, can I name a Big Ten tackle? Let me think. I can't name any. There are none. And you were like, actually, here's 7 guys. And I was like, oh yeah, Jack Nelson was on our show. We've talked about a Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly on Kings of the North constantly. Ursary, like we tried to trade him to Ohio State on a KOTN show. And I'm like, I don't think there are any. I think Josh Simmons actually is the best offensive lineman in the Big Ten. So I swing back and forth. That's why you're here for the football.
That's
but
right.
Good list. But again, it's not Paris Johnson, right? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like Joe Alt coming back and sitting in the Big Ten and being like, well, okay, nobody's going to be that.
Yeah.
Like he has a chance to be in the mix.
He definitely does. Here's a question from Jordan about a guy, Doug, who you've banged the drum for in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I think a fun prediction / thoughts topic would be CJ Hicks' snap percentage this year or his total snap count. That's a little hard to define, I think, but maybe the more interesting part of the question is, what do you think CJ's involvement with the defense will be, and how many snaps do you think he will get this season? Do you have any vibes yet on how you think CJ Hicks might help this defense in the fall?
Hashtag too many good players. I still get like my stomach dropped when you were talking about Jim Knowles saying like, well, I'm going to take Jordan Hancock off the field. I want to like run down the hallway of this hotel and scream, how can you take Jordan Hancock off the field? This makes no sense to me. And when there's ever a conversation about like, I don't know, well, you have to do like, how do you get CJ Hicks on the field? If it's taking Sonny Styles off the field, we're going streaking. We're in old school land. I'm running through the middle of Columbus screaming, don't take down High Street. Don't take Sonny Styles off the field. So on the list of that, then you get to the point, it's like, I think CJ Hicks still has a chance to be really good. And I think he should play 8% of the snaps this year. So like, that's not, but it can make you feel like a crazy person. So the one thing is, this is how it works. And we don't have to apologize for it. But I've hashtagged too many good players. I've done that many times before. And then it's like, oh, somebody got hurt. Mm-hmm. They got abducted by aliens. Like, it's a violent sport. Stuff happens. So probably something will happen. And when it turns out that the 12th and 13th and 14th best guys on your defense are starter level and ready to roll, boy, is that a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a very strong possibility that alien abductions of other players on the defense could have a huge impact on how much CJ Hicks plays. We might be at a point where like, oh, he played more than half the snaps, because unfortunately they needed him to because other things happened. Beyond that conversation, though, if it's like not that conversation, what is it? Say nobody gets hurt. Say they had the healthiest defensive season in the history of college football. Is it above 20%?
I think the way it could get there is if they end up, and I'm not looking at the schedule in front of me, if they end up playing a lot of teams that are more run heavy or more 12 personnel with 2 tight ends heavy, then I do think you could see Jim Knowles put 3 linebackers on the field a decent amount. I think he would like to play Cody Simon, Sonny Styles, and CJ Hicks together probably more than we've seen him play 3 linebackers the previous 2 years. But even that would represent like 10 to 15% of Ohio State's overall defensive snaps. To your point, it's not that large of a number. When they're in their base defense, it just feels like Sonny Styles is going to be the role linebacker. So I don't know if there's a ton of opportunity there. I remain hopeful that they might do some package stuff with CJ Hicks, like passing down kind of stuff, whether that's allowing him to play in space or more specifically, and I think more interestingly, going after the quarterback, just kind of lining up on the line of scrimmage and getting after it a little bit, because that's probably what he does the best. But I think Sonny Styles' move from safety to linebacker significantly impacted the prospects of CJ Hicks playing every single meaningful snap for this defense. I don't think that's where he is at the moment. Jim Knowles said it's like neck and neck. They've not anointed a starter at linebacker. We're going to talk to James Laurinaitis, I think, later on Wednesday. We'll get more information about what exactly is going on there. But it just seems like everything is pointing towards Sonny being the guy at will, which obviously impacts CJ. I think he will have a role, but it's not the role that I was envisioning for him last fall when you thought about what this year might look like, because Sonny obviously is an X factor there.
And in the world, as much as I think everybody agrees that Sonny Styles probably needed to move to linebacker, if Nick Saban didn't retire and Caleb Downs didn't transfer here, now you're right. It's like, well, Sonny's a linebacker maybe, but then on third down, he slides back to safety and CJ comes on the field, or even on 2nd and 8. I think you could see more opportunity for CJ, even if Sonny had still changed positions. But in this world, what do you think is there 3rd and 11? Who's on the field? Are you bringing Jermaine Matthews on the field like as a 6th DB? Are you like, is CJ set? Like, are you taking Cody Simon off the field? And if you want 2 cover linebackers on a passing down, is it CJ and Sonny? But if you're actually going to coverage guys and you're taking Cody Simon off the field, would you just put in Jermaine Matthews and have 6 DBs? Like, what's your package for that?
They've done both. They've not done a whole lot of the 6 DBs. Maybe you can count on one hand how often they've done it in the 2 years Jim Knowles has been here. That is an option, obviously, and I think putting Jermaine Matthews on the field in that role is a far better option than doing it with like Cam Martinez 2 years ago or doing it with Malik Hartford last year. So maybe that means they'll do it more when the situation arises. But I think it's more likely that they just take Cody Simon off the field and have their 2 linebackers be Sonny and CJ on third down.
Okay.
And then you have the ability to blitz, I think, more effectively with Sonny and CJ out there. And both those guys can probably cover space a little bit better than Cody Simon does. Cody Simon is actually, I think, more athletic than we give him credit for, but I still don't think he's as athletic as Sonny and CJ. So that would be my third down look is the 5 DBs that are kind of always out there, and then Sonny and CJ. I guess if I had it ideally, it would be take a defensive lineman off the field, put CJ Hicks on the line of scrimmage, Sonny Styles is your only linebacker, and put Jermaine Matthews out there. Like, I would like to see that, but I don't know if they're going to go that far.
Yeah, I mean, that would be that. Now we're getting into a Jack conversation, but if you take a tackle off the field and have JT, Tyleek, and Jack, right, as your down lineman, and now you're roaming CJ to line up next to Jack and JT, or over Jack or JT, or finding a gap as your 4th rush. Now I want to get the ball. Now, you've just created the tingles, Bill Landis. And now you're getting everybody on the field. That is one of those, no offense to the defensive tackles, but in the end, on 3rd and 11, it's like, just take a tackle off the field. What are we doing? Let's get everybody on the field is either they're either getting after the quarterback or they're covering guys like glue. There's no in between. There's no anything else. And now this still gets me back to when I was just a pup and stuff was just beginning to evolve, and Ohio State had 3 excellent linebackers in 2005. And then on third down, it's like, oh, we're going to take a linebacker off the field because we want to get an extra defensive back in, but we don't want to take any of our linebackers off the field. And so they just let Bobby Carpenter rush the passer. And I was like, I didn't know you were allowed to do this. He's a linebacker. And it's like, yes, you're allowed to do whatever you want to do. It's a best 11. So now we're talking. Because I was also wondering, like, could you just, it's almost like move Jordan Hancock to linebacker and let Jermaine Matthews play the slot. And Jordan Hancock's, I think, has risen to the challenge of being physical, but then also if a back's coming out of the backfield and trying to hit you with something on 3rd and 11, and now Jordan Hancock's covering the back or whatever, it's like, that sounds good to me too. So you've solved it though. I don't want to take Jordan Hancock or Sonny Styles off the field, but I want CJ Hicks to play. So that probably means the second defensive tackle that's not Tyleek. That's the best answer. That's where CJ comes in.
I think so, because I also think Jack and JT are sturdy enough defensive ends that you can play them inside on. You can play one inside on 3rd down. I don't want to do it every down, but on 3rd down, sure, why not? They kind of do it already with the Rushman package. So I don't know. There are a lot of options for this defense personnel wise. I was actually talking with Bobby Carpenter about it the other day, and he said, I hope it's okay that I say this, but he said, like, this is the most, maybe he said this on his own show, like the most versatility he's seen with an Ohio State defense in a very long time, and the potential for like formational shenanigans, but he is unsure how much they might actually embrace that. And I am also unsure how much they might actually embrace that, but I will remain excited about the possibilities until they demonstrate otherwise. So which I think CJ is a key part of that conversation.
I think goes back to like the first conversations we ever had with Jim Knowles, who feels like a shenanigan-y defensive coordinator, but it's how many shenanigans do you want to use when you have a lot of talent?
Right.
And so maybe just let your 11 future draft picks do their job and overwhelm guys with talent. And we don't have to be doing all these things. But I do think if the shenanigans are in service of getting the best situational talent on the field, and I think you're filling both buckets at the same time. And so we don't want CJ Hicks riding piggyback on JT Tuimoloau to give an offense a different look. We just want to try to get him on the field where he can let his talent make an impact. So, so what's the percentage? What's your percentage in a healthy situation?
I think CJ will play. Yeah, I'll go over 25% of defensive snaps.
Because there's short yardage, goal line, 3 linebacker stuff that he could be part of. There's potentially third down coverage stuff that he could be part of. Maybe even just covering guys as a coverage linebacker if Cody comes off the field. But then there's also situational opportunity to maybe float a little bit, get after the pass a little bit. So that's 3 paths to the field. Yeah. And I think, like Justin Hilliard, what Justin Hilliard did several years ago, when they used him in certain games, he played a lot and he made an impact, even though then when you maybe went back to his overall snap count for the season, it wasn't gigantic. Maybe can inform this a little bit, but also when you get them, like Michigan will play 2 tight ends, right? Iowa will play 2 tight ends. Yeah. I think Penn State at times will want to play 2 tight ends. That there's maybe some opportunities where just positionally, formationally, they actually would want CJ. They would want the third linebacker ready to go in certain games, like no matter who it was, even if it wasn't a 3rd-year 5-star guy that everybody's desperate to play.
Yeah, and just one last point on that would be that I do think that James Laurinaitis will not be as static with his rotation as Jim Knowles was the first 2 years. Like Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers played just about every meaningful defensive snap when they were healthy. I could see a little more rotation at will linebacker. I still think Sonny plays the majority of the high leverage snaps, but I think they will rotate some at that position to get CJ on the field. So, and
I still envision it in my head. I'm sure this is wrong, but when your linebackers coach is also calling every defensive snap, and it's kind of like, hey Jim. So can CJ? I'm trying to. Can I call this play? Can you just be quiet for a second so I call this play? Can CJ hasn't played? But now Jim Knowles doesn't have to worry about that. James Laurinaitis can just figure out how to rotate the linebackers most effectively when Jim Knowles is trying to come up with 40 different schemes and maybe doesn't have time for it. So Jim Knowles is like, Tommy and Steele are playing. Don't talk to me while I'm calling plays. And it's like, okay, well, sorry.
Yeah. Good question from Jordan. I'm going to combine 2 offensive line questions. We can maybe buzz through this a little quicker.
Faster than 18 minutes per answer?
Faster than 18 minutes per answer. Yeah. Alex asked, maybe not, because it's a good question. What is your prediction for the Ohio State's 2025 starting offensive line? He's mostly curious about backups this year, but also wants to get a glimpse of what next year could look like and what positions Ohio State might need to look into the portal for. And then Jeff kind of piggybacked off of that and said, what is the depth like on the offensive line, especially at tackle? And I think Jeff kind of gets to the point there, which is, I think the depth on the interior right now is actually pretty good. Now, you look at the interior of a guy in Seth McLaughlin who's going to be done after this year, a guy in Donovan Jackson who's going to be done after this year. But whoever ends up being the right guard, whether that's Tegra Chabola or Carson Hinsman, who I think are the likely 2 candidates, they're around for a couple more years. I think either one of them is a reasonable candidate to start at right guard and then certainly to start in 2025. So there's 2 there. Luke Montgomery has been playing a lot of center in camps thus far and looks better than I would have assumed doing so. And he's also got some positional flexibility. I think he's probably more of an interior guy than he's a tackle long term. And then Austin Sareveld is a guy who just seems like he's about his business and progressing the way that you would want to see from an offensive lineman who's now in his 2nd year. So what's that? That's 4 guys for the interior who I think should all be back in 2025 and give you a lot of really good options when you're trying to figure out who the 3 starters are going to be in the middle of the offensive line next year. Tackle is a very different conversation. You're going to lose Josh Fryer. You could, as we just talked about, lose Josh Simmons. And there is no one in the depth at the moment that sort of jumps out to me as definitely being ready to start in 2025. There's a lot of camp left. There's a lot of season left. George Fitzpatrick is an older guy. Ian Moore had a decent recruiting pedigree. Definitely on the table for either one of those guys or both of them to make some kind of jump. But I don't feel nearly as good about the future of the tackle position as I do about the future of the interior position, which I think is why part of this David Sanders recruitment is so interesting and what that might mean for Ohio State long term. So that's a long way, I guess, of me saying that I definitely think it is on the table for us to be having similar portal tackle conversations next offseason that we had this offseason when we were wondering whether or not they should move Josh Fryer inside. Like I think they're okay at tackle this year as long as Josh Fryer and Josh Simmons stay healthy. But depth concerns me at that position this year, and then 2025 concerns me looking ahead at the tackle position.
I actually sketched out what I think the starting offensive line could be, not just in 25, but also in 26 and 27. No, I didn't.
Let's see it. Let's hear it.
Do it. I knew you'd answer this question. So I agree. I agree with everything you just said. Who's the third best tackle this year, do you think? If there's an alien abduction of one of the Joshes, who plays?
Probably George Fitzpatrick. The thing is, like, they have viewed Tegra at times as a tackle. They have viewed Luke Montgomery at times as a tackle. So I think either one of those guys could play tackle in a pinch. I think both of them are interior players, but they could play tackle. It's college football. You don't need to be Paris Johnson to play tackle. I think if they like making a true depth chart, it'd be George Fitzpatrick with Ian Moore kind of on the periphery, hoping that a young guy can make a move.
If they get David Sanders, you think David Sanders starts as a true freshman?
Yes.
Tackle?
Uh-huh.
So, they got their NIL stuff in alignment. So, and this is one of those things, and again, I'm at this recruiting and personnel symposium in Nashville, and there's conversations happening about NIL and almost salary cap management in college football right now. And you never want to be desperate. You always want to have a plan B. But it sort of, I think for Ohio State, is you can do whatever it takes with NIL to get David Sanders, or you can spend that money or maybe more to try to get a guy in the portal because you didn't get that the recruit. You know what I mean? So it feels like they may be in a position to need to spend to fill at tackle for the future. So wouldn't you rather fill it with a guy that then you can develop yourself rather than be at the whim of the portal, which can be a dangerous place to be, especially when it comes to offensive tackle. Yeah. There hasn't been,
maybe it'll change, but there just has not been a tremendous amount of movement for elite offensive tackles in the transfer portal. There have been some, but not a ton. It's not enough for it to be a reliable strategy, I don't think. So I would much rather have David Sanders. And I think you're probably hoping that you can use some of that money to maybe keep Josh Simmons too. If you can sprinkle some money at Josh Simmons and keep him, and then throw a bag at David Sanders to get him, I think you're okay. If you don't have either, then I think it could get a little dicey. But I think they'll be good in 2024, which is the more pressing issue. Last kind of camp/player question here, and you have good perspective on this. You've talked about it before, talking with Kansas State folks at Big 12 Media Days. But this question is from Andrew. Says Joel Klatt from Fox, your guy who stiffed us, by the way, for an interview on Kings of the North.
Absolute stiffed. Absolute. Joel, can we get you? Yes, let's do it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes. He vanishes.
He's nowhere to be found.
He was in Colorado. I think he moved his flight up. He's like, oh, God, I don't want to talk to Doug. Can I get on the 5 a.m.?
Yeah.
Oh,
so I have actually not heard Joel say this, but I will trust Andrew with this question. Joel Klatt is fond of reminding people that Will Howard is a, quote, cast-off quarterback, that he left Kansas State because he was going to lose a starting job there anyway, that he's not the savior for Ohio State. What is your take? I thought he was NFL caliber, but now Joel Klatt has me questioning myself.
So it's two different questions. I think if you want to label him a cast-off quarterback, I think there is validity to that, because if he had stayed at Kansas State, he wasn't going to start this year. But I don't think that's about Will Howard. I think that's about Avery Johnson, who is the highest rated recruit in Kansas State history, who is a second-year guy when he's the 9th rated quarterback in his class. When you look at the top 10 quarterbacks in that class, many of them are preparing to play this year. Others have already transferred because they thought they weren't going to play. So if you're Kansas State, you don't have a choice. You have to play Avery Johnson. And also, you want to play Avery Johnson. They want to play him. Talking to Kansas State people, they are excited. They are not in a world where they're saying, oh, we have to play this young guy or he was going to leave. I hope there's not too many bumps. They are ready to go with Avery Johnson. But that doesn't mean Will Howard's not good. So I think Joel can be correct, but I don't know that means Ohio State fans should be nervous. And like you've said, people have said Will Howard had said, I think, when he was on with Berm and Austin, you guys, like the very first time, right? You were the first guys to ever interview him once he chose to come to Ohio State. He could have gone to the NFL. Now, what does that mean? I mean, you can look at this last draft, right? Wasn't there like a huge gap there were a bunch of first round guys and then it dropped no one got picked at quarterback for 4 rounds. And then Spencer Rattler got picked in the 5th round. And it was like, okay,
yeah.
Could Will Howard have been a 6th round pick? I could have gone to the NFL. He wasn't going to be a 2nd round pick, but I don't know where. I think I've made it on this show before. To me, it's the reverse Justin Fields. This is Georgia keeping Justin Fields and Jake Fromm leaves, and Ohio State gets Jake Fromm instead of Justin Fields. You'd rather have Justin Fields. If Ohio State had been able to go to Kansas State and be like, we'll take one of your quarterbacks, they would pick Avery Johnson. And Chip Kelly would be like, oh. But also, they're trying to win right now. Kansas State's trying to win long term, right? They want to develop that. I mean, so maybe they would take Will Howard for right now because he's played a lot and he's experienced and he can adapt to a new system. Avery Johnson looks like Tarzan. So, I mean, he's just a physical specimen and he has long curly hair.
He does.
So I would acknowledge the validity of the Joel Klatt comment, but I would not allow it to make Ohio State fans super nervous. But also, I don't think Will Howard's going to win the Heisman. I would not bet money on Will Howard winning the Heisman. I think if that's the world you're living in, I think that's wrong. But to live in a world of, oh no, he's not as good as I thought, I don't think it's worth living in that world right now either, because I think he is probably exactly good enough for what they need.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just wouldn't let the circumstances of his arrival to Ohio State, which again, I think there is validity in what Joel said. In any way, color your expectations for Will Howard this year. I'm with you that I don't think he's going to win the Heisman Trophy. I don't think Will Howard is a 1st round quarterback. I think if the very small snippet of what we've seen so far of Will Howard in camp can be extrapolated over the season, he is probably in the best shape he's been in his career. He's throwing the ball better. He really seems to have a grasp of this offense. He can absolutely run and impact games that way and win games for Ohio State with his legs. If I thought Will was I thought Will was like a borderline draftable player coming out of Kansas State last year if he had gone to the draft. I think he will certainly be something more than that when he comes out of Ohio State. And he will be good enough, I think, for Ohio State. But yeah, if you're waiting for the next CJ Stroud to fall out of the sky and be Ohio State's quarterback this year, I don't think that's the situation that we're in. But I think that there are a lot of ways that Will Howard can be exactly what this team needs him to be without being like an all-world kind of quarterback and without the circumstances of his departure from Kansas State being anything other than it kind of made sense for both parties. I think for Will to leave and for Kansas State to embrace Avery Johnson and for Ohio State to tap Will Howard as the guy who's going to be their quarterback this year. I don't think it happens very often in college football when you see roster moves, but I actually think this could work out or end up working out quite well for all parties involved here.
I don't think it has ever happened at Kansas State before.
Yeah.
Kansas State has the best quarterback prospect they've ever had. And so when you're Kansas State, which is a very good winning program, but which is not in the top tier of college football, you must maximize that in every single way. Mm-hmm. And so Will Howard kind of got pinched in that reality. So have the correct expectations.
Yeah.
If you're Ohio State fan. But don't be worried.
Don't be worried. I think that's it. Yeah. Don't be worried. All right. That covers our kind of camp / player questions. Got a couple coaching questions, a little bit of nonsense as we like to do here. We'll do all of that coming up in a bit after this break on Kings of Columbus. Back here on Kings of Columbus, continuing to answer your questions about Ohio State football. Doug, we got two two pretty good questions I thought about. Like it's future coaching staff stuff, and one of them from Rich, I think is a nice sort of addendum to the conversation we had going into camp about Ryan Day, about fan expectations, about the conversation that what happens if Ryan Day doesn't beat Michigan and achieve all of Ohio State's goals this year? What does that mean for him? And not a lot of people asking like, well, what if he does? kind of questions. Yeah. So that was the question from Rich. What are your thoughts on Ryan Day's future at Ohio State if Ohio State does accomplish all of its goals this year? I have a feeling that he may make a move to the NFL if that happens. And then he wants us to ponder some potential replacements for Ryan Day. If Ryan Day did go to the NFL, we can do that if we want to. But I'm more interested in the, I guess, like springboard for Ryan Day conversation if Ohio State does, in fact, beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, mostly win a national championship. I don't really think it matters how it happens. What it would mean for Ryan Day in his future if Ohio State does win the national championship this year.
So is RJ going to be a sophomore in high school?
Yes,
that's right. He played. Yeah. This is Ryan Day's oldest child, who played as a true freshman quarterback in high school last year. Correct?
Yeah, at the Sales, I think is where it is.
Yeah. So you just got to keep family stuff in mind. I don't know that Ryan Day and Nina Day would be in a hurry to make a change while RJ's in high school, and they have other children as well. And we're not like only talking about the football player, but like we're just using it as an example of family stuff. So I like to try to factor in family stuff when you can, because guess what? It matters. Would Ryan Day want to watch his kid play college football? It's hard to do when you're coaching college football.
Yeah.
It's also hard to do if you're coaching NFL football, but it's probably easier that you're not playing on Saturday. You could at least watch on TV and be super locked in. You might be able to sneak away on a Saturday, depending how things line up.
Plus, you have the Thursday games, you have the Monday night games, right? I think though, even if you were an NFL head coach, there's more opportunity baked into your schedule to have a Saturday available.
So we're talking about successful, everybody loves him, winning national championship Ryan Day. I don't think he's going anywhere in the next 3 years, right? This is because I also think he wants to build on it. You don't want to win. You're not one and done. It's like, well, I want to try to win too. So, okay. So RJ is a sophomore this year. Who are some other important Ohio State? Oh, Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin are freshmen this year. So RJ Day would be a senior in high school when Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith are juniors at Ohio State. And if I was an offensive-minded head coach, I might want to ride out this Sayin Smith thing and see how far it can take us.
Yeah.
And then it might be sort of a line in the sand a little bit personally and professionally. And I think you look for opportunities of, well, if ever, when would it be now? Would this be a time to try to do this? Or are we locked in here for the next 12 years if they'll have us? So I think successful Ryan Day, not that they're not going to have more great players. I would want to see Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin through. I want to see that to the end, and it might just line up personally. So let's assume everybody's locked in a successful Ryan Day world for 24, 25, and 26. And then depending how things look and how attractive he may be, let's have this conversation at the end of the 2026 season.
Yeah, I think that's probably sound logic. I do think I have never taken very seriously any of the Ryan Day, not his interest in being an NFL head coach, because I think that's always in the back of his mind, but like the interest from the NFL that has come up in a couple off seasons, like in Ryan Day, I don't think has been all that real. I think that's been agents kind of doing their job. I think winning a national championship would reignite those conversations in a more meaningful way. But I do think the family stuff would keep him here for at least a couple more years. So to see through RJ's career, to see through Julian, to see through Jeremiah, Tavian St. Clair is coming after that. So like that's another
true.
Excited to. So there are a lot of things I think could keep Ryan Day in Columbus. So it's not like the quarterback pipeline is stopping anytime soon. The one thing I do wonder about is if Ryan Day reaches that mountaintop after giving up play calling, what that would mean for his NFL prospects should they exist. Because you're not Sean McVay then, right? You're not the wonderkind play caller who got your team to a championship. You had to give it up to get your team there, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. But then I also don't know. Like, I don't think Ryan Day's like Dan Campbell either, right? Like the rah-rah sort of motivational CEO guy who has really good coordinators working underneath him. So the dynamics of Ohio State's like coaching structure now, I think make that a little more complicated of a conversation than it would have been if Ryan Day, and Justin Fields like would have gone off to the NFL together after the 2020 season kind of thing. Not to say that it will inhibit him from getting that job, but I do think the conversation changes in the world where Ryan Day would not have been a college play caller for a couple of years. Like let's say it is 3 years from now and Chip Kelly's here with Ryan Day in lockstep the whole time. And maybe Ryan Day has 2 national championships. He's like Kirby Smart. And like, I don't know if Kirby Smart is getting NFL interest, right? Like that's more of a college, like really good college coach conversation, I think. So I don't know. Maybe it's not as much of a slam dunk, but I do think that if he does win a national title or 2, those conversations will get louder and we'll be talking about it every offseason.
Yeah. And just, I think it probably remains at the back of his head, but I don't think it's at the front of mind. And I think with a lot of, again, just these coaches want to have a chance to win. And then they want, because like everybody says that, right? It just makes, Ryan Day said that when he got here, it just makes going into the office and like all the time away from your family to be doing that in a world where it's like, well, if we're good, I hope we're 4-8. But I also missed my daughter's karate exhibition because I was at the office until midnight in the pursuit of 4-8. And there are a lot of guys who get forced into that situation because there's a lot of 4-8 teams out in the world and you need a job and you love football. That's a tough way to live. So, and Ryan Day has talked about this on the record, like the opportunity to succeed at the highest level is what makes for him all that stuff worth it. All the sacrifices you make, and you get paid a ton of money, but like the personal sacrifices you make are worth it because you are pursuing excellence at the highest level. So the family stuff absolutely matters. But I also think my interpretation just of a guess is that Ryan Day's pursuit of excellence at the highest level would probably include a shot at the NFL if and when he can. I think he will remain curious about that. But he's still a young man. He has plenty of time to do that. He can do that after all his kids are through high school. He might be locked in for another 10 years and then he can go do it when he's 53. That's fine. That's still plenty of time to do that. So, but I think you bring up a good point, which is a credit to Ryan Day. Has he perhaps increased the chances of winning at Ohio State, but lessened his attractiveness to the NFL by giving up play calling, which is just like another check mark on my list of like awesome job giving up play calling because it's not about you, it's about the team. And that's a good decision.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like there's plenty of demonstrated success with him as a play caller that I think NFL teams could bank on, even if Ryan Day is not doing it for the foreseeable future. So again, it's not a roadblock, but I think it's an interesting layer to the conversation that didn't exist a couple of years ago. And then we have a Brian Hartline question from Jared Duncan. Will Brian Hartline ever be the primary play caller for Ohio State? What are the odds of that happening? And what do you think is the most likely scenario for how Hartline's career plays out? I'll go first. I don't think Brian Hartline will ever be the primary play caller here. Mostly because I don't think Brian Hartline wants to be the primary play caller here. He has the coordinator title. I think that is important for his future prospects. He has more responsibility than he had a couple of years ago. He is a demonstrated developer of receiver talent. He's a demonstrated recruiter. And if Ohio State has success offensively, which I believe that it will, he will have played a larger hand in that than he did a couple of years ago. And I think that is good enough for him to get a head coaching job somewhere. I don't think he needs to be a play caller at Ohio State to eventually become a head coach somewhere. And maybe I didn't think that a couple of years ago, but I believe that pretty strongly now. Do you think he needs to one day assume those responsibilities to ultimately become a head coach?
I've always thought he's an Urban type. And Urban was the receivers coach at Notre Dame, was not a play caller, and got the head coaching job at Bowling Green and was off to the races. And you are a recruit culture coach. And it doesn't mean you don't have offensive acumen. Urban had a ton of offensive acumen, but that's not, you didn't hire Urban because you thought he was like doodling stuff on a napkin. So I think that's probably where Brian Hartline is. And I just don't think the situation in the end, and I think this makes sense, is it's hard to be a first-time play caller at a place like Ohio State. You have to go do it somewhere else first. But like that ship has kind of sailed, I think, for Brian Hartline. Like he's not on an offensive coordinator at Ohio State path. I mean, he already is that. He's not on a play caller at Ohio State path. He's on a head coach path now. So, and here we are in the North. I think we're just at the point, and I don't think the schools that would want him would require that because he'll just get some schemer. I'm gonna teach us how to get after it in recruiting. I'm gonna set a winning culture for the program, and I'm gonna hire some 28-year-old schemer to come dial it up. And I know how I want us to play, but I don't have to doodle it to prove it. So watch how things go at Cincinnati this year. Watch how things go at Pitt this year. Watch how things go at Illinois this year. I think there are multiple programs in this part of the country where if it doesn't go well and they want a shot of adrenaline from a winning dude, it might be time without ever calling plays here.
Yep, I agree 100%. And Cincinnati is the one that's like been on my mind lately because we talk about a lot among Kings of the North. I don't think Scott Satterfield is long for Cincinnati, and I think
I'm going to Cincinnati practice on Thursday. I will tell him that. It's like I told Abdul Carter what you said. I'll just raise my hand. Listen, maybe they'll be great. I mean, it's year 2, right? I mean, maybe it'll be great. Who knows? It'd be great. Let's see Cincinnati rise up. Good luck, Cincinnati, in doing that. But also, if it doesn't happen, I don't know that there's a long leash, right? Which is just
right.
So we'll see.
And I think that again, we're talking pure hypotheticals here. We're like, that's a Big 12 job now. It's a $3 million a year salary kind of job. Like there are a lot of, and it's natural recruiting in Cincinnati. There are a lot of things that I think could be enticing about that job. And, hiring a former Ohio State assistant worked out pretty well for them the last time I did it. So I could see it if it'd be on Brian Hartline, but I think that the crux of the question, like, does Brian Hartline need to call plays at Ohio State to be a head coach? I don't think so. And I don't think he needs to go somewhere else to be a play caller before he becomes a head coach. I think he's just fine where he is, if that's the ultimate goal. It's
sort of like the Ryan Day quarterback conversation. It's like, what's your exceptional trait? You don't need to have 10 exceptional traits. You just need to do something great. Does Brian Hartline have an exceptional trait that would make him appealing as a head coach? He's the best recruiter and developer of his position group in the country. That's an exceptional trait. Let somebody else call plays. It's fine.
Yeah. Right. All right. Let's get into a little bit of nonsense, shall we? It's not nonsense. I don't mean nonsense. So I don't mean it pejoratively towards your questions. They're great questions. They're just not necessarily about Ohio State football. Yeah. All right. We have a couple. Let's do this one first. From Justin. Justin's going with his wife to Alaska so they can cross off a bucket list destination for her birthday. Sounds like a lovely time. What travel destinations are on your bucket list? You're a little more worldly than I am. So I'm curious, like, where, I mean, you've been to, I've been out of the country like twice. And one of them was to Jamaica for like a beach vacation. It counts, but like I stayed at the resort, You've been to more places than I have. So I'm what's on your list still of places you haven't been to that you'd like to get to?
So 2 things. One is I want to see old stuff because I'm old. So I want to go see ruins and stuff. I was just talking to a friend of the program, Jared Smalley, who's a TV guy in Columbus, who just did like this really cool package about the ancient Olympics in Greece. And he was talking about that you can like go to the spot where they were running Olympic events like in BC times. And it's just like, what? So I don't know that I'll ever get to Egypt or the pyramids or like that kind of thing. I would be super interested in that. But I think the most realistic thing that I would like to do is go see ruins in Mexico. There are some things like if you go on a cruise down the coast of Mexico, you can get off and do like a day trip. I've been listening to podcasts about Tenochtitlan, like the ancient city in Mexico that the Aztecs had. And then the Cortez came and was like taking your city. And it's like what Mexico City is now. But I think there's stuff there that you can see. So I would like to go climb around on some ancient civilizations. Also, I want to go to every Disney World park. So I'm a multifaceted. So I really want to go to Tokyo Disney, and then I think there's a Hong Kong Disney and a Shanghai Disney. So I've been to I've been to California, Florida, and I've been to Disneyland Paris. So the other ones are in Asia. But if you're super rich, and if KOTN pops and we're both millionaires, which I think will take at least another 18 months, Disney has a flight that you can do for the super duper rich, where they just put you on a private plane with like 10 other people, and they fly you to all of the parks.
That's awesome.
For 1 6-week trip, we're going to go to this one and this one. And so if I had unlimited funds, I would want to do that. But if I don't have unlimited funds, I might just save up every penny I have for a plane ticket to Tokyo so I can go to that Disney park.
Yeah. That's actually awesome. I didn't know they did that. I also didn't know that there were 3 Disney parks in Asia. So I thought there was just one. I thought there was one in Tokyo, and that was it. Yeah. Good for Asia.
Done over there. I mean, not so much with the democracy protests in Hong Kong, but like Disney parks.
Disney parks, great. Yeah, they're all set up. I've never been to Europe. So there are a few places I'd like to go. I've lately been on a kick where I really want to go to Scotland. Which I don't know. Does Scotland consider itself Europe? I guess they probably do. Yeah. I want to go to Croatia. I want to go to specifically Dubrovnik, which is like the Game of Thrones. It's like King's Landing. I want to go.
Please be careful when you say that phrase anywhere near one of our shows. The lawyers are listening.
Yeah, I know.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
What do they have there? Like that you can go to stuff that was on the show?
I don't know if they have stuff. I'd imagine they shot it there, so I'd imagine. But the overhead shots of King's Landing with looks like almost like terracotta roofs and stuff like that. That's Dubrovnik. And it's beautiful. It's on the water. I don't know what sea that. I don't know my European seas. Is it the Caspian Sea? I have no idea. But it's a sea.
No help. I have no help on offensive line depth and European seas. You're on
European
your own, brother.
Seas. They got a lot of seas over there. How about a lake? Yeah. Europe? I went on a lake one time. And the question did mention Alaska. I would like to do. I think I could get myself to do an Alaskan cruise. I am anti open ocean. I don't think I could ever do a Bahamas cruise or a Caribbean cruise of any kind. Never could I do a transatlantic cruise. No shot of me ever doing that. I think I might be able to talk myself into an Alaskan cruise where you're kind of hugging the coast the whole time. But maybe not. But regardless, I would like to go to Alaska, and it seems like a cruise is the best way to experience Alaska. So I think I could maybe slick myself up for that one.
Yeah. And I was again, it's I don't think I could swim 1,000 miles, but I think I could swim 20. It's okay.
It's also less about my ability to swim to shore and more about the chances of someone being on shore who can come get me.
Yeah. No, that actually is legitimate, because it's you're gonna make it 20 feet no matter where the ship goes down, man. I don't know what to tell you. Same for me. But we actually did an Alaska cruise a couple years ago, and it was good. It was good. We tried to go the port we wanted to go to where you could do the sled dog stuff. The port had caved in 6 months before, so we didn't get to do the sled dog stuff. So I was sad about that. But otherwise, it's good. But also, but I think some of the more Alaskan-y stuff is in the interior. And so I also think there's a part of it of, I think you would enjoy an Alaska cruise. I also think you might enjoy driving around Alaska. So you could just get in your car one day.
I don't even want to tell you how many times in my life I've looked up how long it would take to drive to Alaska and then drive around Alaska and then drive back, but it's been a lot. But there's also, I watch a lot of travel videos on YouTube, and there was one I saw recently where people, I think they flew to Alaska, and then I don't know what the 2 cities were, but they took a train from one place to another then the second stop was where they were leaving for their cruise. And along that train route, they basically got the experience of Alaska. So I think ideally that's what I would like to do. And then maybe if I do the train ride, I don't have to do the cruise, and then I don't have to worry about my crippling fear of boats in the open ocean.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. No, that's a good plan. Yeah. We can make a travel show. Let's make a travel show.
We should make a travel show. Yeah. Good question from Justin, and I hope you guys enjoy your trip to Alaska.
Yeah, have fun. That's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds great. Brandon asked a little bit of a thinker. Have either of you gone through phases of loathing watching sports because it has become your full-time job? I can imagine an insatiable appetite for sports is what got you into the sports media space in the first place, but has the pendulum ever swung too far in the other direction?
Yes. I think covering Major League Baseball killed my love for Major League Baseball. That was too much baseball. 4 years of 162 games was too much baseball, especially when it was losing baseball.
Mhm.
Over time, I have gained an appreciation for exceptionally talented and hardworking athletes performing at the highest level. That does pretty much continue to entertain me when it matters. Important games featuring highly skilled, hardworking athletes performing at the highest level. That holds great appeal for me across the board almost all the time.
Mhm.
The mundanity of long regular seasons, the inanity of hot take topics about ridiculous stuff, I think makes sports less fun in a lot of ways. We really want to try our best to avoid that stuff. We want to help make sports more fun. But I think being close to it for our job has actually increased my appreciation for that. And that has almost helped with it. That you realize how ridiculously talented these guys are and how ridiculously hard they work and how unlike us they are. That
Mhm.
you could say the things they do 100 times a game, I couldn't do once. And the thing that like they do for 20 years, I couldn't do for 15 minutes. So that has increased, but there are sections of it that when you're knee deep in it all the time, you're like, what am
Yeah.
I doing? This is crazy. This is not normal to make this a job.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly with you. Like I guess I come at it from a different point of view of like I still very much hold my fandoms for the teams I grew up rooting for in Philadelphia. So that has kept me pretty locked in as like a general sports fan kind of goes. But I definitely there was a time in my life where I was just like, I'll watch whatever. I'll watch whatever NBA game, right? And I don't do that. I can't. I don't have much bandwidth for, as you said, the mundane regular season stuff with the NBA, the MLB. Hockey, I do a little more because my wife likes to watch it. But like, I'll be on Twitter some nights and I'll see like people on a random Wednesday in February, a decent amount of people like, oh man, I can't believe John Morant just did that. And I was like, I couldn't be more disinterested in watching a random Wednesday night Memphis Grizzlies game kind of thing. Like catch me when the playoffs start kind of deal. But I also don't I never covered baseball. I've only really ever professionally ever covered college football. So that has helped, I think, me maintain some of that because while college football is becoming more and more of a grind, I don't think it's ever going to be the kind of grind of like covering a baseball team or covering an 82 game regular season and then the playoffs for NHL or ML or NBA kind of stuff. But it's definitely different than I was when I was younger and wasn't doing this professionally. But I still have the birds that keep me locked in, you know?
There you go. Still got the
Yeah.
birds. And I can very vividly, because I did a little bit of sort of NFL coverage when I worked in Wilmington, Delaware, and helped out on the Eagles. I was never the primary beat writer, but I can remember to think to myself, I never want to cover football full time. This is not what I would want to do. When in a world where I had covered baseball full time, I had covered more NBA than I had covered football. And now I think it's the only thing I'd want to cover. Because I like the rhythm of a game and then a fun week of like talking about things and anticipating things. Every game matters. Football's not mundane because you can't blow off anything, right? Even
Right.
when you know Ohio State's going to win its first 3 games by 50 points, there's still like it still matters because it's only 1 out of 12 in the regular season. So football fits modern American society in such a great way that I feel very fortunate that this is what I'm doing right now. And I think a lot of people watching this show, like that you care about college football. I think you probably believe that too, that it just fits your life a little bit better, especially when you're busy and you have a busy job or you have a busy family or whatever. And so, I don't think I could do it. And I admire the people like that, Paul Hoynes is is just a tremendous dude and has covered Major League Baseball for 40 years. And like, I don't think I could do that, or I couldn't enjoy it. He loves it. He has so much energy about it. It's 162 games and he works his butt off and he knows the sport inside and out. And that I couldn't do. I couldn't. I wouldn't be tolerant enough. I wouldn't be smart enough to keep finding interesting things to talk and write about 162 times a year. I'm smart enough to figure out 12. 12 games. I can figure out to talk about 12 times.
Yeah, I'm there too. I think I said this before. Like every February, March, I'm like, man, I wish I covered baseball. And then in July, I'm like, thank God I don't cover baseball. I just could not imagine the grind of doing that for that long. It's crazy. But I love spring training. Yeah. Is there anybody that's hiring only to cover spring training? Because I would do that.
Great. Yeah. Spring training is fun. Have you been to spring training?
I actually only once. I've been to Clearwater. We're in discussions about potentially going next spring. We'll see.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah. All right. Last question here. It's more of a football question, which actually I had never really thought about it, but I think Kyle kind of raises an interesting point here. Now that Oregon is in the Big Ten, do you think Ohio State and other Big Ten Nike schools should band together to force Nike to put up guardrails relative to its involvement with Oregon's NIL operations? It seems strange to me that the Buckeyes' passionate fan base could be partially funding a direct competitor. Woody pushed his car across the state lines to get gas. Should I refrain from buying Nike apparel?
Oh, wow. Should Ohio State become a New Balance school? Everybody can wear those tan Stephs, right? Is that the thing?
Yeah.
This is a fascinating question because I do think, would there be a way, would Phil Knight say one is business, one is personal? Nike supports every school that we have a contract with. Phil Knight gives money to the Ducks. Now, Phil Knight's money comes from Nike, but one is Phil, one is the swoosh. I don't know. I actually think that there maybe could be some ground that the Nike schools, especially in the Big Ten, but everywhere, could tell Nike, like, let's be chill with the Nike part of it. And I don't know the specifics of like how Oregon's NIL or their promotional stuff works at all. But Phil can Phil. Phil's going to be Phil. But let's try to draw a little bit of a personal, professional line. I mean, this is Pumagate. This is how everybody, right? Who was it? Kyle? Who just said this?
It was Kyle. Yeah.
Kyle started a revolution. Everyone's leaving. It's either because you can pick one or you can pick 50. Who are you picking, Nike? But let Phil be. It's a great question because again, being down at this personnel and recruiting symposium, it's so much more complicated. And when Nike, whatever, has deals with professional teams, Phil Knight isn't also going to the Lakers and saying, here's an extra $25 million to get a free agent. Because there are rules that say you can't do that anyway, but also it's business. You would never do that. So this is business, but it's also personal, and there aren't any rules about it right now. It is an awesome question. I have no answer.
I don't have an answer either. I do. It does feel like there's a conflict of interest there, right? That probably should be addressed. And I suppose it's specific to Nike and Oregon, but you can extrapolate it. Like I know, like there's some Coca-Cola money floating around Georgia. I would imagine there's like some Walmart money floating around the Arkansas football program. Like there are large corporate entities that have ties to college football programs. There's L Brands money floating around the Ohio State program. I would imagine like you could do it with a few different brands and programs, but I don't know that there's any you can draw more of a straight line to them between Oregon and Nike and all the complications that come with that relative to other teams that are Nike schools. I did look this up. So last year in the Pac-12, 8 of the other 11 teams in the Pac-12 were Nike schools. So like basically everyone else in the Pac-12, almost everyone else in the Pac-12 was a Nike school. It is a little different in the Big Ten. So the remaining 17 teams in the Big Ten that don't include Oregon, only 10 of them are Nike schools. Oh. So it is a smaller percentage. So you have I don't know, a smaller percentage of your league that I guess would be concerned with something like this. There's a decent amount of Adidas. There's a couple Under Armour schools in the Big Ten. I don't know. I don't know the answer either. Nike could probably tell you to shove it if you tried to bring it up to them, because Nike's cool and you want to be a Nike school. I think Ohio State would probably end up selling less apparel if it were to switch to anything other than Nike. So I don't think they're going to do that. Are there ways to broach the topic in a more gentle way? Perhaps, but I think as long as Phil Knight's around and there are no guardrails, Phil is going to Phil, as you said. Like, I just think he cares too much about the Ducks to not try to help him win a national title.
Yeah. It's interesting. You know, I was like, what if Ohio State started its own sneaker and apparel brand? And it was just, instead of a swoosh, it was a Buckeye leaf. They build a factory, make some shoes. I don't know.
Look at you. You're creating jobs in Ohio now.
Yeah. We'll make our own shoes, Phil. Like, middle of the second quarter, Jeremiah Smith's like running down the field, try to catch a touchdown pass, and his shoes explode. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
that's why we shouldn't make our own shoes. They're better at this.
That's right.
Great question. I would like, this would be the kind of thing of like, try to bring up the ADs or whatever, you know, hey, by the way, how do you feel about this stuff? And I think I have no idea, but I guess the answer might be like, yeah, it does kind of, it's weird. We don't love it, but what are we going to do about it? Like, to your point, like, okay, Nike's Nike. It's one of the few things I think of the world of Ohio State in the end, in almost every situation, and we are included in this. People need Ohio State more than Ohio State needs them. That there's a lot of situations where Ohio State can be like, okay, fine, leave. Don't stop. We'll find a replacement. This might be one of the few circumstances where somebody could do that to a place like Ohio State, which has so much power in almost every other situation.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. Anyway, I got to go put on my Nikes and go over to Ohio State availability. So, and I'm sure you got to put on your Nikes and go back to the personnel symposium, because everyone wears Nike. Nike is all powerful.
I actually wasn't going to wear my Nike. I'm still wearing my new shoes that got turned brown by the Big Ten field. So maybe I'll put on my Nikes instead.
My Nikes were destroyed by the new Big Ten field.
Hey, Phil.
Oh, you know, I'm just realizing now. They sent out the media survey for Big Ten Media Days, and I didn't put your field destroyed everyone's shoes in there.
Oh, I didn't see mine yet. I have to find it. I haven't looked for it. I assume it's in there. I'm 1000% putting that on there.
Yeah.
And I'm sending him the bill for my shoes.
You should. Yeah. I just put, please have more water next year.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, not
please
destroying everyone's clothes. That's good too.
PJ Fleck be on our show and buy me shoes.
That's right. That's right. All right. We will end it there. Thank you again to everybody who sent in questions. Again, 614-662-4509 is where you can sign up to be a texter. Be a good time to join and get the 2 weeks free. Take you up to game week, I guess, at this point. And then you can decide if it's for you going into that first week of the season. Those of you who already do that, we greatly appreciate you. We greatly appreciate your questions. Again, more camp coverage coming here on the podcast channel, more camp coverage coming on Kings of the North. We hope you join us there as well. For now, he is Doug Lesmerises. I'm Bill Landis, and that was Kings of Columbus.